Have a seat. We have Richard. Oh, I can almost not fit this chair. Okay, can you fit? Do you fit? Oh.
It's very comfortable, actually.
I feel a bit like squeezed in. Well, we have Richard, founder of Fabric Ventures. It's hot, right? Yeah.
It's hard, but I just ran here because I ended up at a different FIRA, apparently.
Oh, you went to the, okay, yeah. Yeah,
that one, yeah.
There is two FIRAs, by the way. Yeah.
It was the driver was trying to be very helpful, but he just assumed I was going to the multi-day congress anyway.
Well, sometimes I'm not sure if they do it on purpose.
Oh, really?
I'm thinking, because people are not that stupid normally.
That's
you know what I mean?
Sneaky. I definitely am that stupid.
Well, okay. We have the honor of having Richard, founder of Fabric Ventures, one of the largest VCs fully focused on Web3 and AI. Not every day I'm talking to a Richard like you. So, to begin with, well, I'm Victoria Gago. I'm not that important, but I am the founder of this event, so a little bit important. But I think to begin with, I would like you to introduce yourself, Richard, but without talking about your career. We usually always talk about, like, I do this, I do that, I did an exit, I make that much money. So, Richard, who are you if we don't talk about your career?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting exercise and a good question to ask oneself repeatedly throughout your life, I guess. Can everybody hear us, by the way? This is a lot of background, it's fantastic. I guess I'm about to describe who I am, but who are you folks, just to get it going? How many here are kind of founders who are building something new? Fantastic. The rest of you should be ashamed of yourselves. You should be building something brand new, but there's still time. And then how many are investors, or themselves, or with other groups? That's good. Just a couple. We don't want too many of those horrible people. And I'm not quite sure who everybody else is. Maybe you're kind of voyeurs of some type and just wanting to kind of to learn. But that gives me a bit of an idea. So I think, well, I just off the cuff, like some thoughts about who am I? I'm definitely kind of somewhat competitive. I have two brothers, and we did all the classic competing to eat the food off the table, competing for the attention of our parents, probably, et cetera. So that's definitely part of me. I feel like I'm constantly lazy, so I always feel like I'm not working as hard as I should be. And I'm not, but then at the same time, people say, oh my gosh, you're sort of workaholic and you're always working. So maybe I'm just incredibly inefficient, and therefore I feel guilty all the time. But I think there is sometimes that feeling I see in people who've built things. But I love the kind of the harmony of a well-orchestrated team, and how collectively, whether it in kind of cerebral pursuits or physical endeavor, we can achieve more. I can remember actually, in a sense, sort of led into my career that I'm not talking about. I went into the computer room at school and first got the idea that there was not just a computer, and I'd been playing around with sort of ZX81s and Tandys and BBC Micros and various other things. But this was a set of networked computers. And I had this kind of light bulb moment. I guess I was 12 or 13 or something. So kind of about like 1987 or thereabouts, a bit earlier. And I had a light bulb moment that with computers all connected together, not only could each person have their productivity increased, as Steve Jobs put it, with a bicycle for the mind. Everybody know that quote from Steve Jobs? A few people basically said, if you look at the animal kingdom and you look at how fast we can go, we as humans, we think of ourselves as the kind of pinnacle of God's creation, as he could have said it, to paraphrase. or the crown of creation. But, of course, on so many dimensions, we're actually terrible. We're not very fast, we're not very strong, none of these things. But if we want to go fast, like in comparison to cheetah or something, we can make a bike. Yeah, and we can make a bicycle and we can go much faster. And so a computer is like a bicycle for the mind. And then I had this light bulb moment when I saw all these bikes for the mind connected, so we could all kind of work together. And I think the light bulb moment was connected to how I could possibly get my homework done for school more efficiently. So again, kind of maybe demonstrating my laziness. But joking aside, that was the power of networks of humans sort of armed with computers. That was an epiphany for me.
Very nice. So, well, now you know Richard is very lazy, but at the same time a work alcoholic. But yeah, I've heard this. I mean, I know this feeling. I also feel I'm extremely lazy. But very interesting how you got fascinated by computers. And I think now maybe we can dig a little bit more into your career. But just a quick question first. When did you buy your first Bitcoin?
I bought my first Bitcoin using blockchain.info, whatever, back in end of March 2013, something like that. And then I sort of got into investigating the space after that. But I mean, I bought it because I was hunting for a theme to invest around.
And I could for a theme to invest around.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the things. So if I'm about to be given permission to talk about my career, one of the things I learned in my startup career. So I came out of university and I had studied engineering. So I was. That was Cambridge in the UK, and I was definitely obsessed with the idea of trying to have an unfair advantage when you then build a company. How do we get technology from the incredible universities right across Europe and get them deployed in great companies? And right from back then, again, competing with, should we say, the Silicon Valley ethos that everybody had seen. I can remember watching programs about the brain drain to Silicon Valley from the UK and from Europe when I was probably sub 10. And this feels like this was something that we needed to arrest. In my startup career, and I built a few different companies, focus and having a theme, a specialization, is a clear advantage. And so when I wanted to start my investing career, I was looking for a theme around which to build our kind of specialization. And so I asked my long-term collaborator who also studied AI, basically machine learning, speech recognition at Cambridge. I asked him from where he was sitting over in Silicon Valley, what was hot at that point in time. And I'd heard about Bitcoin, but had not looked into it. And he replied just with VR and Bitcoin was the two things he replied. And I was like, VR, I'm just not sure that it's going to really take off at a tremendous pace. And of course, there's still challenges with that, and that's not to be dismissed. But Bitcoin, I thought that sounded really cool. So I went and bought some basically. But there's more to the story after that. But
very nice. Okay, so at some point in your career, you then managed to launch Fabric Ventures. And well, as you told me the other day, you were kind of like looking into like a new paradigm when it comes to software. And as of now, maybe I think to really dig into like your career and also like the sectors you're looking into, where do you see the opportunities? Because we have many hypes and then it seems like something is gonna last forever, but then it dies. Where are you investing?
Sure. So, I mean, the perspective we have on this, and people come to this space with many different perspectives. I think you can come at it from a philosophical perspective, that actually you shouldn't have to rely on banks and governments, and you should be able to look after your own assets and identity and data and life. You can come at that soon becomes possibly a political perspective. We want to reinvent the notion of governance and government. We want to increase the efficiency with which we can run democracy in a small scale, but even at very large scales. We want to hence essentially increase the efficiency of freedom. because I think democracy, you could argue, is the closest we've got to a kind of non-anarchist freedom of some description. So you can go down those directions, or you can come at it from just a pure sort of monetary perspective and say, we just think that we should have our own money as should we say, the people, that is internet sovereign and can't be deflated away, which of course we're all starting to experience right now. The other direction to come at it, and it was kind of, and I'm not dismissing any of those, but the other direction to come at it is, which is really where we had come from with the folks I've been building companies with, and then as Fabric, is that there are proven waves of technology and technology adoption. The classic Carlota Perez waves of technology adoption, if you've read that book, and you could look at going before the information age. You can obviously go back to steam and the wheel and all these things. But in the information age, we've had mainframes and then mini computers and then the PC and then the internet giving birth to the web. And I had been fortunate enough to kind of build in my first company something that was a component of the internet that was getting ready to carry the web, the first wave of the web. It was something that's a piece of middleware using open source at scale to manage that new data network. And then I'd worked with a bunch of incredible people to build another open source based platform on a tiny component. Someone laughed at me as when I said it the other day, but a tiny component of what you can think of as the cloud. And we would think as the key components of Web 2 as being the fact that you can use your mobile to get on it. It can be hosted on the cloud, and you have some kind of identity because of social. And so what we saw in Web 3, and what we start to generally more call the open web, but let's start with Web 3, was this new stack, and to be very simple about it, and to build on that point about the efficiency of governance and democracy and freedom, a new stack that facilitates the coordination of many individual people in quite complex tasks, devoting a lot of time and resources, where you take advantage of the selfish pursuit of self-interest by individuals but you bring them together for the collective good. So it's a balance of those two things. That orchestration, that coordination power, superpower of this new computing stack is what got us super excited 10 years ago. And so we come at it thinking of as a new stack, the Web3 stack, that is everything from settlement on Ethereum, or Near or Solana, take your pick, all the way up through to serverless, decentralized user interfaces above the kind of identity layer. And I think in the future you'll see, and this is where I think it takes us into the world of the open web, integration with autonomous AI agents that are going to be both necessary or useful for us to handle the complexity of this new all-enveloping web stack, but also actually necessary to even make governance of this new forms of governance work at scale.
So, but if you have to mention a few of your favorite sectors, because you talk a lot about collaboration between people, computers.
Yeah, so it's a very broadly applicable kind of capability. But this is how we've seen this last 10 years. There's been a lot of kind of moments of incredible hype, driven obviously by the price action that we all see by the different types of token within the market. And look, the fact that these DeFi capabilities are baked into this stack, the fact that this is a software stack that can make and keep financial commitments and promises, and no other stack has ever been able to do that before, no other sort of software paradigm has been able to do that. That is not a bug that leads to speculation. It's a very key feature, for sure. But what it means is that in the effort to build what Vitalik has described as the world computer over the last 10 years, you end up with a situation where the world casino becomes the headline. And that's just, again, if you go back to Carlota Perez's sort of thinking, that's just a necessary part, that you have that speculation, almost that irrational exuberance, to coin that phrase, that works to the advantage of deploying a new wave of technology. And so I think therefore, it's inevitable that from time to time, two things happen. Number one, we think that sort of DeFi has arrived because we see the price action, and we think we're about to overthrow the existing centralized finance sort of industry. That, of course, is, with care, ultimately, I think, a very powerful and a benevolent thing to happen. However, it's pretty hard to do because, there's a few incumbent interests. It also distracts from the fact that building this world computer, the ability to be comfortable with your own network native identity, carrying all of the data you generate through all of your activities on an ongoing basis, you go about your daily lives, and for you to bank yourself and not get worried you're going to lose your private key. This is really tough to build and make scale and make usable. And everybody's got very impatient. Why don't I just have Web3 decentralized apps that just work for me, that just give me a decentralized way of sharing my photos with my friends, or take all of my health data and present it back to all of the stakeholders in the health industry and deliver back to us better predictions of pandemics or better predictions of diseases and possible solutions for them. Now, both of those things, should we say open or decentralized, Web3 social or decentralized Web3 social media and open health, that both of those sectors are definitely coming, and ones that we're looking at. I would have said that things like Lens and Farcaster and a whole bunch of apps in those ecosystems are doing very powerfully. I think on the open health side, we've seen things. Who's here has used Sweatcoin or Steppen? So we're seeing apps now that you can use to start to get paid to extract a tiny little bit of your data from you about your activities, perhaps to get fed back to insurance companies to present you with a slightly better rate on your insurance. So I think we're just seeing the beginning of that. Us getting comfortable with sharing an awful lot of our data on our daily lives and then feeding into the health sector. To pick another area that we've invested in quite a lot and it continues to take off, it's in gaming. And so there were things like Axie Infinity. Did anybody use that game in the last wave? So you could buy little Axies and you could battle them and breed them and so forth, and you could earn money by doing this. But ultimately, it wasn't a sustainable and stable enough, internal digital economy. And ultimately, it wasn't that great a game and that beautiful. But all of that is changing. People are thinking very hard about to marry up sustainable token economics, where you can earn from your actions within the game, to superlative game mechanics, which of course people know a lot about, to something that is fully performant, an on-chain game that has got the same sort of characteristics as something you'd expect from a AAA studio. There are a huge amount of people working on that, and I think we'll see either on your phone or in, dare I mention it, AR or VR contexts, really engaging and immersive opportunities, which with lots of gamification. I'll mention one thing we haven't announced, but I'll sort of mention it obliquely. So an investment that kind of both rolls out robots that you can kind of own and control, and then gamifies the interactions with them in a kind of Pokemon Go type fashion, in order to capture data to train those robots down the line for navigating the last mile for deliveries. So if we think kind of obviously navigating roads is its own type of complexity, but delivering to the door is also another level of complexity. So I think there's lots of interesting innovation going on in all of those different spaces, and there are spaces beyond that as well.
Fantastic. Well, Richard, we're running out of time. You sound a little bit like a philosopher sometimes. Have you heard that before?
Absolutely not.
Okay. No, but it's good. That means you're smart, even though you're lazy. But okay, last question. Very important, right? So we are in Europe. We are at European Blockchain Convention. Where is Europe in the whole Web3 space compared to the US and China?
So, I mean, with each wave of technology, I think we get a new opportunity. My parents are actually Australian. I'm just kind of arrived and then thought, hey, why don't we have fun and build great companies and build great products? And why should the US be having all the fun? Meantime, in those last 3 decades, obviously China and Asia has erupted on the scene enormously. I was at Token 2049, tens of thousands of people, this is a very borderless, very global movement, if we can call it that, or we can call it that. There is an opportunity, but we really need to get our act together. The venture capital funding is still kind of 20%, 25% of what it is in either of those two geographies. That's something the government needs to fix. In as much as I can spare the time from kind of my day job, I try and help catalyze that, and you can all do the same by spreading that message. I think we've got an ecosystem that's way better than before. Look at this, with lawyers, with advisors, with board members, with role models for success, be it Skype or Polkadot, or actually in big part Ethereum, that we can look up to within Europe. That's super critical. And the science of startups is much more democratized now right across the globe, so we can all work out how to do it and so forth. So I think that's critical. But we do need more capital still. And we're kind of at a fifth of the level on the kind of input level to the capital. We're at like 1% of the level on the output in terms of the market capitalization. It's not good. Having said all of that, I think there is something about this balance of the needs of the individual and of the collective good that is quite European in nature. It's kind of, a little speaks to the European mission of a kind of federation of states, and within states of respect for the privacy of the individual. Europe has championed things like GDPR, which I think has had a knock-on effect across the whole of the world. And I think that as we enter this next age where we are going to have this abundance of expression and opinion and creativity through AI, we need to balance it with the scarcity that kind of Web3 can bring. The fact that you can determine exactly who someone is, and where their creativity has whether it's come from them or not, and to ascribe them the value from that. I think that those are kind of a yin and yang that need to work in harmony, and I think that's going to be important, because one way of thinking about it is that we have kind of like somewhat unbridled, occasionally cowboy, very powerful surveillance capitalism embodied in the US, and that sort of US model. And on the other hand, and I'm not meaning to get political about it, but arguably they have their own road to kind of to furrow, to plow, and they have reasons for this. They have a large nation to manage, but China obviously has, to some degree, a surveillance state and a direction that they could go even further that direction. And so in between surveillance capitalism and surveillance state, there's a good book about surveillance capitalism from Zuboff, is some middle path. And I think there is a middle path, a kind of collective capitalism or modern mutualism of some description.
That's Europe.
That Europe can try and own, which sounds like a good idea to me.
I like it. Well, Richard, amazing. I've learned so much. And I hope also you have. I know we're a bit over time, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you have some interesting projects, reach out to Richard.
Absolutely, we're investing. Nothing has stopped. There's sometimes there's more noise, sometimes there's less noise, but there's always a signal of great founders across Europe and the world, and so I'd be thrilled to talk to them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Richard. Big applause. Woohoo!